What is up? Let's get Instagram up and running. Let's go. All right. I think we're live, baby. Let's take some questions. Let us take some questions. Gonna give it a second. All right, some guy from the net. Welcome, I see you. Your papa's boy, I see you too. Yeben, how's it, my friend? And then we got Latabo. Welcome. Are you guys keen to stick around? Let's chat. Keen to ask some questions. Let's talk. Had a long day today. I was in a workshop this morning, did a talk, continued the workshop, back at the office, doing live, and then gonna have to dive into some content and some actual work stuff that we have to do. But I didn't go live yesterday, and that's why I'm live now. So let's kick this off. Who can I help with anything today? Ask a question. If this is your first time here, please let me know. Drop a little one in the comment section, maybe. If this is your very first time on one of my lives. I'm trying to go live every day of the week. Sometimes I skip a day, maybe I skip two. But for those of you who have been following, I've been a lot more consistent, which is something that I'm very proud of. So trying to make this a daily habit, getting there slowly. And excited to see who I can help. So throw those questions, throw them at me. Ruan 12 is asking, what is the key to getting a high POAS? Now, for those of you who don't know what POAS means, it stands for profit on ad spend. And profit on ad spend basically is how much money are you spending on marketing versus how much profit you're getting back. So there's a metric called ROAS, which basically is money spent on marketing, revenue generated on marketing. Now, that is the metric most marketers use to gauge if an ad is doing well or not. But it's not the only metric that can help indicate if the ad is truly adding revenue and profit back into the business. Because ultimately, you want to get a better idea if the ad is actually profitable, because an ad can generate revenue, but is it actually making the profit it needs to make? So there's a few ways to look at POAS. Some people say it's your money spent versus contribution margin, or the contribution profit that you've got left. I like to just look at it as money in, what is the total profit that I'm getting back, in terms of profit before tax. Now, for us, it's very possible to do because I have a good idea of all my expenses of the business and so forth. But if you're working with a client or someone who can't share all that information with you, then yes, maybe contribution profit divided by the total spend is probably a better way to look at it. But if you have all the information of your business, then I'd highly suggest that you focus on profit on ad spend from a profit before tax standpoint, maybe or before fixed expenses, or whatever you feel like is appropriate. And now that I've given you guys context to what POAS is and why it's important, let's talk about how to improve it. So the first thing is, there's a bunch of things that come to mind, but the first thing is you first need to find a way to increase your average order value. You ideally want more people to buy things that essentially is more worth to the business in exchange. Does it make sense? Sorry, my brain had a brain fart there, but ultimately what I'm saying is you want to make sure that people buy more from you when they buy. That's maybe a layman's way of addressing that. I had a bit of a brain fart there. That's what's important. It's like you want people to buy more from you. So in order to increase POAS, you can get strategic about how you increase your average order value. That's the first thing. Is there specific upsells you can put in place so that you get more revenue back for paying the same cost of acquiring the customer? Because you're already paying to acquire the customer, okay? And that's costing you $150 or $200. So now the question becomes, how can I get as much revenue back from that customer while they're actually spending money with my business? At the time they're actually spending money with my business, can I upsell them? Can I essentially try and increase the average order value? Okay, does that make sense? Because if the average order value increases by another $100, and if you spent 10 Rand, hypothetically speaking, if you spent 10 Rand to acquire the customer and you were only about to make 400 Rand back, that's a 40x return. That's huge. Let's make that a bit more realistic. Let's say you spent 100 Rand to acquire the customer and you made 400 Rand potentially back. That's a 4x rise. But if you were able to upsell them in the moment they were about to check out for another $150, then the actual order value goes from 400 to 550. So now the ROAS actually jumps from 4x to 5.5x. And essentially, because the fixed cost of acquiring customers stays the same, there's a higher probability that you're actually making profit on the back of that. Does that make sense? Cool. Another thing is to purely just try and increase the actual effectiveness of the advertising. So if you increase the ROAS, naturally the POAS will also increase, just as a result thereof. If nothing else really changes, right? So in theory, the question is, can you make the ads more effective so that the ROAS is higher? Because then naturally the POAS will also be higher. Because the cost of acquisition will most likely be less. And because the cost of acquisition is less, because the ad is better, you have a higher ROAS, and therefore you have more profit. The reason you have more profit is because the actual cost of the sale was less. Does that make sense? So you've got average order value, upsells and cross-sells that you can play around with at checkout. You've got just making better ads as the most obvious thing. And then you can also focus on essentially the conversion rate of the actual website, because the higher the conversion rate, the higher the ROAS, and therefore, again, inevitably, the higher, or there's a very good chance that POAS will grow with it. So if you can increase your conversion rate, then essentially you'll also most likely drop the cost of acquisition, which means there will be a higher ROAS again. So now imagine you doing the trifecta of those three things, which is making better ads, increasing conversion rate on the page, and you have higher average order value. Ultimately, POAS now should be more. So those are just three things that come to mind that I think from a marketing point of view, you can look at. Ruan, 12, let me know if that was sufficient in answering your question. And if I fell short or you have any other questions, then I encourage you to ask it and let me help you. Right, Mr. Turner asking, how do you build mental resilience? Some days are just tough, man. 100%, my friend. I think mental resilience, majority of people are not born with it, and it's something that you start to choose. And because you choose it more often, your behavior starts to change. And because your behavior changes, the actual default process of staying resilient when things go tough or when things go not the way that you wanted to, and things that you're not preferring is happening, or life gets challenging, then it's just so much easier to switch back to having resilience because it's become part of your DNA. So the thing is, ultimately, the issue is not that today you have resilience and tomorrow you don't, because that's very possible to happen. But the question is, out of 365 days a year, how many of them do you actually have true resilience? So you're looking at it as a quantified method, okay? So it's something that you should quantify. Out of last year, how many days did you truly want to feel like giving up? And how many days did you actually push through and felt energetically optimized and excited to do what you need to do and felt like you had the energy to power through. Let's say that was 50%. Now, if you get into the habit of just doing things regardless of whether you like it or not, and potentially also finding yourself in a situation where you can start to make little positive shifts, that little bit of momentum can start to compound and can give you confidence in essentially becoming more optimistic, or essentially giving you the feeling that things are going to be okay. So I'm just vomiting my thoughts out here and how I'm dissecting, the question, because mental resilience is not really something that you just switch on tomorrow. You're gonna, a lot is gonna have to happen in a 24-hour period for you to completely change your perspective on the challenges that you have and make you feel like you have the emotional capacity to see those challenges through. So it's most likely not something that's going to happen in 24 hours. And I think that is the first thing that you have to most likely accept and realize that this is a behavioral change. I think that's what I'm trying to allude to. Maybe I'm not articulating myself as well as I ideally want to. But to exercise mental resilience and to become more mentally resilient, you're going to have to look at changing your behavior, because it's ultimately your behavior that has caused you to not be mentally resilient, or to not feel like you have the energy to be resilient. So it's a behavioral issue. Okay. So when you understand that it's a behavioral issue, the biggest thing for me, I realize perception drives behavior. So when you can alter your perception about a situation, about where you find yourself in, the challenge, etc., you can ultimately also start to change your behavior. So Tony Robbins has said this quite nicely. He said, a lot of people talk about duty. Like, I have this duty to wake up and go to work and make my money and feed my family. But you can ultimately change your perspective from the duty of it to I have the privilege of it. This is something I'm privileged with, that I have the fortunate life where I can actually do this for the people I love. And with that small perspective shift, your energy starts to change. And because your energy changes, you start to attract different situations into your life as well. You see, life is all energy. And so much of what you're experiencing right now, actually all of what you're experiencing right now, is a result of the energy that you have been putting out. Facts. It's just how it is. A lot of people might not believe that. It doesn't mean it's not true. It's just facts. It's just how the universe is constructed. So when you realize that your perspective affects your energy, and your energy starts to create the reality around you, then it's ROI positive to really work on how you see things. It's ROI positive to really look at changing your perspective about a situation. Because in changing that perspective, you are able to feel different about it. And when you are feeling different about it, then there's a good chance more of what you're now feeling, which is new, could be positive. And that new positive outlook, or that new perspective, can essentially then give you the necessary resilience that you need. So when you realize that everything in life boils down to just the perspective that you choose to adapt in accordance to the event that you're experiencing, or the challenges that you're experiencing, then you start to go, damn, is it possible for me to change my perspective? And can I become more aware of my perspective in the moment when I'm choosing a perspective that's not serving me? Because if you can become more aware of those unconscious little behaviors, they will be less unconscious and be more conscious. And you can change your perspective at will when you feel like it, which will give you the necessary energy to be more resilient. And again, like I said, this is a behavioral change. So it's something that will take effect slowly and start to compound over a series of weeks and months. if you think that you're going to brute force your way out of to be mentally resilient, then at some point you might just burn out, because it's almost impossible to you're going to end up either burning out or switching off completely and becoming numb to life outside of you. So I really think the most positive thing that you can do is to actually reflect on your perspective when it comes to the challenge, shift that perspective, which will shift your energy. And also, how would you feel mentally about a situation if you knew that that was part of the path that you have to walk, that is unfortunately part of the journey that you have to go through in order to get to where you are? If you told me, Mr. Turner, that you want to generate X amount of money and X amount of profit, but you have this massive challenge in front of you, and I told you, yes, Mr. Turner, the only reason that challenge is there is to help you become the version of yourself you need to become in order to achieve that goal, how would you feel about that challenge in your life right now? You're going to look at it as, damn, okay, cool. Well, so if I can just get through this, I will most likely increase my probability of reaching that goal. And that is an example of a perspective shift, which gives you, again, just that little bit of energy and that mental bandwidth to deal with what's coming your way. Please let me know if you agree. Please let me know what you think of that. And again, that's just my perspective, but I hope that there's some value in there for you. My camera seems a bit blurry. Why is that? Is it just me? Maybe it's fine. Cool. Michael Bayer. Hey, Jandre, how do you ahead starting business? Should I study a lot on AI and Google Ads and tech? So what should I do first? Study or build and study at the same time? Yeah, I don't think it's a if this, then that, or rather this or that situation. I think it's a this and that situation. Your sentence there is a bit disjointed. Maybe I'm reading it incorrectly. So it says, hi, Andre, how do you ahead starting a business? Should I study a lot on AI and Google Ads and tech? I understand what you're trying to say there. So indirectly, what you're asking is, should I study? How much should I study? Should I look into Google Ads or Meta Ads or AI or the tech around starting a business, or should I just completely get it? So I don't know how old you are. I don't know if you say study, if you're referring to studying a specific degree and then trying to start a business, or whether you're just saying, I want to study all the necessary principles needed in order to start the business that I want to start. Assuming it's the former, where you're studying for a degree and you want to learn the skills needed to start a business, that's very possible. You know how many people do that right now? Hundreds and thousands of millions of people. Okay. It's very possible to still study your degree and also in your spare time, as opposed to drinking and partying. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have fun, but just be conscious of what else you could be doing with that time and find the balance between fun, learning valuable skills, and studying. If it's the latter, where you're not studying any degree, however, you are in a position where you want to learn the principles needed to start a business and grow it, and you're wondering if it should be put into AI or Google Ads or Meta Ads, the first thing is none of those, actually, to be honest. I would advise that you study neuroscience. Okay? This is a very left field perspective and a very left field piece of advice. But neuroscience is the study of the brain and how it thinks, how it operates, and essentially how it makes sense out of things around itself. So look into the term neuromarketing specifically. Neuromarketing is what I will go deep into, because neuromarketing is all about the psychology around what makes people buy. And I personally think that is the best skill you can have that will pay dividends and give you the most amount of leverage today and in the future. The reason I say that is because that's what I did. Okay. I studied neuromarketing, neuroscience on my own before AI, before YouTube had any topics available on that. It was purely just me and Google search. But by learning neuromarketing and understanding how the consumer's brain works and what makes them buy, everything else became so much more effective. So imagine it as a pyramid or a triangle. At the base of the triangle, what carries the most amount of weight in terms of your foundation, in terms of your success, will be the psychology of what you put into the market. Meaning, if you have a product or service, you're going to have to sell it. And the psychology is what makes or breaks whether people want to buy the product or not. Because if you can't convince people psychologically to actually want to give you money in exchange for that product or service, you're going to struggle to build a business. So the number one skill that solves that for you is the neuromarketing understanding. Then once you understand the psychology of what makes someone buy, then it's understanding the tech that can help you reach those people so you can tell them what you need to tell them from a psychological point, from a neuromarketing point, in order to get them to buy. Are you following along? Let me know if I'm making any sense. But the idea is that you understand the core principle that basically makes everything else work. Because you can go and learn Facebook ads, you can go and learn Google ads, but if you don't know how to sell, there's a good chance you're going to be wasting money on Facebook ads. You're going to be wasting money on Google ads. Michael Veyer, did I answer your question? Let me know. Hugo Vermaak is asking, hey, Jandre, how does one avoid being compared to Temu? Major complications we deal with competing with them and being shaved under the same comb. That is a very good question. And so many companies are falling into the same category where they're just getting categorized as someone who's selling the exact same products as Temu. Here's the first reality, and a very harsh reality. If you are selling a product that people can buy on Temu for half the price, regardless of the quality, you already have more friction in the market than most other competitors or than most other brands selling something completely different. It's almost like the selling component has already become a little bit more difficult because naturally people would want to see if Temu sells that product and at what price. And a huge percentage of South Africans would rather save money rather than paying for better quality. That's why I said regardless of the quality, because people are not going to really worry about the quality unless you can objectively explain to them how the quality of your product is very different to the quality of another product. So if quality was really a big pain point for someone, then yes, you can still compete on the fact that you have better quality. But unfortunately, in South Africa, in the economy that we're in, most people find themselves in a position where they're happy to jeopardize a little bit of quality as long as they save a lot more money, because money is pressing. So that's the first thing, is understanding that the reality is you are being fairly categorized. And it's not your fault, and it's not the consumer's fault, and it's not Temu's fault. It's just how it is. So when you accept that and make peace with it, the second thing is, cool, as opposed to getting annoyed about it, how can this challenge me to be more creative about how I position my product or my service in the market? And what I would do is I would really go and find out what are people hating about Temu right now. And most likely you're going to find that they're saying they're waiting long for their product. They have terrible support. The product quality was terrible. It looked like I was going to get this and I got something completely different. Those are just some examples. Now, what you can do is in your product page, you can literally just explain to everybody who wants to buy the product potentially from you that these are all the things that we will do differently. We have amazing support. Our average response time is 15 minutes. One of the biggest lessons about marketing is always make what you say objective. Never say, we have great customer service. Rather say, we have amazing customer service because our average response time is 15 minutes. Or our average problem gets solved within half an hour. So you can reposition customer service in a much more attractive way, number one. You can also say that our average package gets delivered in 48 hours. As opposed to waiting for a week if you had to buy from Temu. You can also do a comparison video or some form of visual component of where you showing people how your quality is just better than someone else's. So those are 3 ideas. And if we have to zoom out, that's maybe like the short-term solution is repositioning your marketing messaging and throwing stones at Temu without mentioning the word Temu necessarily, but just throwing stones at your competitor and saying, we won't do this, we won't do that, we're better at this, we're better at that, here's objectively why. You can also play with the local South African or proudly South African badge if you want. A lot of people say it makes a massive difference. I haven't seen that it makes a massive difference. I think people just want to save money, whether it's local or not. I think maybe your more affluent market is more conscious, but most people, but you can go with that route and maybe experiment with that too. But here's the biggest piece of advice. Here's the biggest piece of advice for you, Hugo, if you're listening, is that you need to find a way to change the brand. Because if you have a strong brand that has a strong emotional connection with the potential customer, people will happily rather buy from you versus Temu. So it sounds like you have a store that sells products. And therefore, because Temu is a store that sells products at a much cheaper price, they compare you with that by default. If you had to switch your lens and your strategy from being a store that sells products to a brand with a personality, with a founder who is out there and talking and making connections, and the brand is actually something that people enjoy seeing, enjoy hearing about, enjoy watching ads from, enjoy reading emails from, a brand that has a personality that makes them feel a specific way, that makes them feel understood, that makes them feel like this is a company that gets me, then you should see traction away from being compared from Temu over time. That takes time. So the long term is to build brand and to find a way to reposition the products that you sell. The short term is make your marketing more objective, do a lot more comparison, get more tangible with how you focus on selling the USPs of the product, and essentially play to the strengths of your business and to the weaknesses of Temu. Does that make sense? Captain Monko, I see you, my friend. How are you, brother? I'm good. Thank you for asking. Already half an hour in. Damn. So, is it Lochi? What should I be doing to acquire more clients? I build client acquisition systems for SMEs, but I'm having difficulty explaining that prospects in a way that clearly communicates the value. Lochi, just an interesting question. What kind of client acquisitions? I'm assuming it's leads. And it's not hard to articulate that you're building a system that gives people more leads. I would literally lead with, no pun intended on the word lead there. I would literally start by saying, do you want way more leads than you're generating right now on a monthly basis? Here's how I'm going to help you generate way more leads and convert a much bigger percentage of them into actual sales. And here's the proof that I've already done it for all these other clients. I don't think that it's such a big issue. I think, okay, so there's two components here. Let's break them down one at a time. What should I be doing daily to acquire more clients? So first of all, how many people are you emailing? How many people are you calling? What is the conversion rate on the emails? What is the conversion rate on the calls? Okay. If I asked you now, how many emails have you sent to find new clients this week? What are you going to say? No offense, you're most likely going to say less than 10 or 20. Am I right? I probably am. And if I'm going to ask you, how many people did you call this week that might be a prospect for the services that you have, and how many of them converted, you're most likely going to say less than 20 as well. Am I right? Most likely. Okay. So in the instance that I'm correct, then I want to tell you that you need to at least do that. Email 20 people, call 20 people. And then I would tell you not to do it per week, but per day. And then I'm going to tell you to 5x that, so it becomes 100 calls a day and 100 emails a day. And then you're asking me, Jandre, how is it possible to send 100 emails a day? And at the time, you can automate all of that. And you can buy a bunch of domains, create a bunch of emails under those domains, warm them up, and essentially send 5 to 20 emails automatically from those domains, which will then put you roughly in the 100 email a day range. And if you run an email outreach system that sends 100 emails a day automatically, and you make 100 cold calls, either you or someone in your team, I will find it very hard to believe that you're not going to sign more clients. Unless the way that you now come, and this comes to the second part of the question, the way you position the service and sell the service is just absolutely terrible. Okay. So first of all, you need to do a lot more volume. You need to do a lot more of the work that you're currently doing or not doing. And then it's a matter of speaking to these people in a specific way that makes them feel that there's actual value in what you're trying to sell. And speaking to these people, it's literally, you don't have to say client acquisition system and stuff like that. That is just jargon that a lot of people won't even understand. Speak in a way that a 10th grader will understand, or they actually say a 6th grader will understand. And I would just write an email saying, hey, John, I noticed that you're a law firm. I would love to increase, I'd love to send leads your way. Is that something you'd be interested in? Just a cold email. That is a really great cold email, even if I have to say so myself, because even though it just took me 5 seconds to think about, and yes, it could probably be dissected and there's a bunch of elements wrong with it, I still think it's extremely powerful. Because if I get an email from someone saying, hey, Jandre, I'd love to send some agency leads your way, just let me know if you're open to it, I am 100% most likely going to say, yeah, Bruce, sure. And now you have the option to reply and say, amazing, would you like to jump on a call, or can I give you a quick phone call and then explain to you how it works, or explain to you what I have in mind? And then I might say, cool, will you call me between 2 and 3? And then when that person calls me and they say, hey, listen, So we actually work with a bunch of agencies, and on average, we increase lead flow by like 30%, and we drop the cost of lead by like 30%. We actually have a proprietary system that just like is extremely effective. And I was actually in the area and I looked at the website, and it looks like you're doing something similar to what all our other clients are doing. So I actually thought this might be of interest to you. Would you mind that that I send you more information? Would you like to hear more information? And then when they say yes, you go, cool, well, let's jump on a Zoom call. And then on that Zoom call, you hopefully have a beautiful presentation put together. When I say beautiful, I don't mean in terms of design. I mean beautiful in terms of simple to understand, easy to communicate what you're actually doing, and easy to understand the value that's in it for them. And when you then show them how the system works in a very simple way, there's a good probability that a lot of them, or a few of them, or at least 20% of them would say yes. So you need to do a lot more outreach. You need to change the way you sell your service. And the advice around changing how you sell your service is to simplify it and to speak to them in a way that creates curiosity, so you can get them on a call. Have a whole psychologically engineered presentation on maybe a little backstory about you, all the success your clients have had, how the system works, and then what it can do for them and how much it will cost. Just follow that format in itself. So Lockie, I hope that helps. Ron says, yes, thank you. Amazing. I'm happy that helped. Mr. Turner says, this was on the mental resilient question. Thanks, man. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going through, becoming numb to life, but I'm afraid to turn off the brakes. Well, that's what I said. I think mental resilience, if you just power through, for those of you that are tuning into this conversation now, is that if you're just going to power through, at some point, you're either going to burn out or you are going to become very numb to life. And that is not ideal. I wouldn't want that for you. So you really have to change your perspective on the situation and understand that it's all part of the process to get you to where you want to be. And once you start seeing it that way, that there's lessons in all these events and all these challenges, that it's all just pathways of things that you have to go through that will allow you to experience metamorphosis so that you can become ultimately the beautiful butterfly from being the caterpillar. That is what you're going through right now. Okay, so you are a caterpillar and you're crawling and doing your thing, and life seems very depressing. But the metamorphosis that you're going through right now is essentially what's going to turn you into that beautiful butterfly. And that's the way I see shit, bro. Like, I promise you, it freaking works. Hanso Sidat says, hey, Jandre, if you don't mind, how do you guys charge for your ad services to clients? Pay per some kind of result, like appointment, or base fee, commission or result profit percentage? So I'm not operationally involved in the agency, so I don't exactly know what our exact prices are. So forgive me for not being able to give you that information. But what I can say is how we sell and how our packages work. So we keep it very simple. We've tried all the models out there. South Africa, what a lot of people don't understand, is a very completely different beast than America. So when you listen to all these American gurus, everybody tells you, do this, do that. This is the best model. This is the best price. Trust me, I've spent close to over $1 million now, if not more, on, I think we spent close to like 1.5 million on mentorships. And every American guru, told us the same thing. There's a lot of value in what they've said, but when it comes to our pricing model, a lot of them have had different perspectives. But ultimately, the core perspectives were the same, that we have to just increase our price and for lead gen, sell cost per result. But ultimately, what we've seen works best for us, depending on the market that you're going after. If you're selling to small to medium-sized businesses, I 100% recommend that you have a setup fee. I 100% recommend that you have a set retainer, a base retainer. And then I 100% encourage you to have some form of pricing lever on top of that that's scalable based on the performance of the account. So the setup fee will cover most of your acquisition costs. So if you have a setup fee of, let's say, $3,000, then in theory, you can spend up to $3,000 on Facebook to acquire a customer. Okay, that's the nice thing, is that if your setup fee is $3,000, then ultimately it will be so awesome to just know that you can spend $3,000 to acquire a customer. So you can put hypothetically $30,000 aside, run ads for $30,000. If you sign 10 clients, you've made that $30,000 back. Plus, you still have the first month of retainer that they still have to pay as well. And then, ideally, what you want to do is find a mechanism, revenue share, profit share, depending on the business. There is not a one size fits all, or additional cost per result as the cherry on top. So setup fee, base retainer fee, and a performance fee. That's the simplicity of it. How you want to skin that is completely up to you, based on what business it is, based on your clients you're going after. T.T, how would you ask your ex to get back together? That's a great question. Well, when I say great, I mean interesting. First time I've been asked that before, but I can already see myself in your shoes. The thing is that if you and your ex broke up, and it depends on, did you break up or did she break up with you? Because that's super important, is who broke up with whom. I think my battery of my camera is going to go dead. Damn it. I don't have you on here to change it for me. Okay, I'm going to try and answer this question, see how long this lasts, and then I'll try and change the battery. If I go dead, then my camera is about to die. So the question is, did your ex break up with you or did you break up with them? I'm going to assume that they broke up with you. The worst thing you can do is just ask them back, because they broke up with you for a reason. And if you have not acknowledged what that reason is, and you have not changed that part of yourself or that situation in any way, if there has been no change, then what is the incentive for them to get back together with you? So hypothetically, if they said, I don't like you because you're too skinny. I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just using the stupidest example I can find in my head. And you go back the next week and go, do you still want to, come on, man, be with me? The reason she broke up with you is because you're too skinny. So first of all, it's probably not the person you want to be with. But second of all, if you really wanted it back, then you have to change something about the skinniness. Because when you change that, there's a high probability that she would obviously take you back. So I think you first need to understand why someone broke up with you. What is the real reason they broke up with you? And then it's a matter of changing or assuring them that situation is now different, or that you have changed in a specific way. And here's how. I really think that a lot of people would just be like, oh, we're so good together, we should just get back. And then people get back, but they break up again 6 months later because nothing has changed. The reason you broke up is still there. And now you're just putting a plaster, a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. So if someone said to me, Jandre, I don't want to go out with you because I don't like the way you dress, and then tomorrow I dress the exact same way and I want to go out with them, there's no reason for them to say yes. They're like, fuck, you still dress like a clown. I want to go out with you. I want to go out with someone who's fashionable, whatever. But if I went back tomorrow with a completely new wardrobe, I'd be like, hey, do you want to go on that coffee now? Then there's most likely an opportunity for them to say yes. The bigger question is, do you want to be with someone where you have to change who you are in order to suit them? So I think my first piece of advice, I'm just answering your question here, but I think the bigger perspective is, bro, or lady, don't be with anyone who don't accept you for who you are. Okay? That's the first thing. I probably should have led with that. Don't change who you are for someone else. However, if you wanted to be with that person, then you need to understand why they broke up with you. And you need to then change either that part of yourself or that behavior or whatever that might be so that reason is not there anymore, so that the relationship can actually now work. It's really not that complicated. However, sometimes when people break up with you, they give you reasons that's not true, just to either make themselves feel better and to not hurt you too much. So I think the bigger question is, when they broke up with you, did they actually give you the most authentic and truest reason to why they're actually breaking up with you? Because if so, you can use that information in order to improve yourself and choose what part of that do I actually want to use in order to improve who I am. But if that's just something they said to make you feel better, then you just be making changes in your life without any actual objective data to prove that was actually a problem to start with. So a lot of nuances there, but I think the simplicity has been explained. Giorgio van Rooyen, have you been able to get in contact with big corporate clients? Yeah, we hate working with them, and we don't want to work with them because it's just too much red tape, man. Just too much red tape. It's hard to work with corporate clients. I don't enjoy it. The team doesn't enjoy it. It's a different kind of stress. Yeah, you have long-term contracts, 12 months, 24 months, all this stuff. But I just don't enjoy it. And it's just not worth it. Moonlight Child, what is a good amount of ad spend to do 500K in revenue with? So the average ROAS is as low as 2 to 3x to as high as 20x, depending on the industry. I don't know what industry you're in, but hypothetically, if you had a 5x ROAS, then you need to spend 100K to get 500K. So run some ads, see what your ROAS is, ask yourself, can I make the ad better? Can I improve my landing page more? Do that, then see what the new ROAS looks like, and then go, amazing, the ROAS is 5. Now I just need to divide the target I want based on the ROAS that I have. So if the ROAS is 5, you take 500K, you divide it by 5, and then you need to spend 100K to get to your target. Simple as that. My camera is about to die at any point. So if you have a question, ask away while I'm still here, because I might disappear in any moment. At what point should you close a business, or will it just based on an entrepreneur? It's all based on an entrepreneur. There is no fine line. I mean, if you're about to get liquidated, then yes, maybe it's time to close the business. But it all depends on your appetite for risk. It all depends on your ability to solve the actual problem that's causing the business to fail in the first place. It all depends on how much money you have to actually keep feeding the business while it's running at a loss. Those are the 3 things. So what is your appetite for risk here? Because every month that you're not seeing a success and you're going backwards, it's risk. How much money do you have, and how long can you actually go backward for? And what is the ability to actually solve the problem so you can keep growing? And then maybe the last thing is, what is your appetite for actually wanting this business to succeed? Those are the 4 questions I'd ask myself in order to determine. And then if this business succeeds, how big can it actually get? Or is it worth my time putting my energy into something else that will be more lucrative, more profitable? I think those are the 4 questions I'd ask. So Hiku came back regarding his Temu comparison question. I get you, man. Consumer saves money, but gets burnt a lot in times when the order arrives. I do understand that, and I agree. I don't think the decisions are very much around quality. I think the factor is the surprise about how cheap the deal is. Exactly. Consumers are more willing to gamble with this because the risk is low because of the, exactly, 100%. This effect goes various ways when the order arrives, especially not. Fact is that one cannot compete on price with them. They become to go to before called. Let's see if there's anything else called audience. I'm assuming you're trying to say there. So 100%, dude. That's what I'm saying. You have to build brand. You have to build something that is more, that's got a stronger connection with the actual consumer. Because when you start to build brand, people will most likely still want price. However, if there's an emotional connection, people mainly buy on emotion. So they use emotion to justify their own logic. So in this case, if they buy from Temu, the emotion is I'm going to save a lot of money, and therefore it's a more logical decision. But the emotion is I'm feeling the pain of having money go out of my wallet. So because that emotional pain and frustration is less, they'd rather take the risk on the quality. Okay. But at the same time, because it's still an emotional decision, just connected to logic, you can then use the emotion to connect to a different logic, which is building brand, having a relationship with them, just staying the course and continuing to do what you're doing and focusing a way to reposition yourself in the market. What I have seen a lot of companies do, especially in the jewelry space, is they're selling a bit more of a high-end jewelry, because when you're competing at the bottom of the market, then the bottom of the market audience, the low LSM group, they essentially want to go to Temu because Temu has the best deals. So you most likely have to change your product offering so you're not competing or actually targeting these lower LSM groups. So the question is, what else can you sell within the brand that you've created for yourself that could seem a bit more upmarket so that you outposition yourself as a direct competitor for Temu? I'm not saying that Temu won't steal some of your customers, but I'm saying the likelihood just becomes less. My camera went dead, so we can wrap this up. So did that make sense, Hugo? So a small little thing that I actually didn't share before is when you at the bottom of the pyramid, this is the lower LSM. They make up most of the country, but you can most likely just get a different product or reposition it, make it a bit more higher end, and then you're not going after these guys, but you're going up a level, higher. I've seen a few people do that, and that might work for you as well. Hope that helps. FS says, I feel stuck as an entrepreneur. What are things you do to figure out your next steps for business? Let's create because the thing is, this can go any direction, but let's create a bit of a framework for you here. First of all, the question is, what is stuck? Is stuck revenue? Is it excitement, fulfillment? Because I've seen people build great companies and then lose the sense of fulfillment, and even though money's great, they still burn out. I've seen people who make less money but are still feeling fulfilled, and therefore they keep going. So if stuck for you is money and fulfillment, the question then becomes, if it's not fulfilling to do this anymore, period, regardless of the money, then you need maybe a different conversation with yourself. But if you think that this can still be very fulfilling, and the only thing that's preventing you from experiencing expansion and levels of growth, which will then again bring you fulfillment, is just making more money. So then it's just a matter of looking at the business model, dude. Maybe your business model is terrible. I'll be curious to know what your business model looks like, because by fixing the business model, maybe you've got everything in place to capitalize on growth. You just don't have the right model yet. But if it's fulfillment in itself and the excitement for the actual product or business or industry that you've created, then I don't think there's much that you can do to come back from that. But if it's purely a monetary thing, then I would question whether you have the best business model. And how I would approach it would be to find someone in my network who is in the same industry, who is successful, and look at their business model. Because if they're in the same industry as you, and they're selling the same type of product or service in you, then the question becomes, what are you doing wrong that they're doing right? So when they tell you what they're doing, you compare it to what you're doing, and then you ask yourself, how can you start changing what you're doing to match more of what they're doing so that you can increase the probability of breaking through the slump? So you just need to find more people in your industry that is achieving the level of financial goals that you want to achieve, and really just be honest with them about having a coffee and trying to pick their brains about what you're doing wrong and what they're doing right. You'll be very surprised how many people are willing to sit with you, have a coffee with you, and actually help you. So the FS says the suck is no more customers and questioning the validity of the business. Again, what is the business? Because I'm sure there's someone who's got an exact same business who's doing really well. That's the big question. That's the big question. And you need to spend more time figuring out what you're doing wrong with the business model. And the only way to do that is to study some great authors. You know, maybe if you read Sell Like Crazy by Sabri Subi, if you read $100 Million Offers, $100 Million Leads, $100 Million Money Models by Alex Ramosi, if you read Ready, Fire, Aim, if you read Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, if you read Clockwork, if you read all those books, it will most likely give you an indication of what you're actually doing wrong right now and what you can do differently. And at the top of that, you also want to speak to people in your industry, in your country, because that contextualizes things further based on the information that is written for the world. I make CVs for students and employees in tech. Okay, well, that explains a lot. The amount of people who actually care about their CVs is getting less and less every single year. And AI can now do that with a click of a button. So the market size is shrinking year on year from both ends. So your market is shrinking from a needs perspective, and your market is being shrunken up or eaten up by AI from an implementation perspective. So if I was you, yes, your business model is wrong, and I would, not wrong, but you get what I'm saying. Your business model is most likely the one that needs to change. And I'd ask myself, what other skills do I have? What else excites me that matches my skill set that I can probably tackle? Because CVs for students and employees in tech, one, the amount of people that need CVs becoming less and less. The amount of businesses that look at CVs becoming less. That is why less people start to care about their CVs. And AI can now do those CVs. So the implementation of making CVs is also shrinking from a service point of view. So I don't think, I'm not saying that you can't build a good business out of it. I'm just saying it feels like you're going to be swimming upstream in order to make a good business out of it, unfortunately. Just put it that way. It's not a business I would like to be in. And sorry, that I hope that you see it with all the love and care and intention, the good intention that I have for you. That's just a very tough business model, and you swimming upstream for no real reason. Okay. Thanks for joining, everyone. I had a lot of fun. I hope you had too. We got one more question. Just plain old Mike. How's it, my friend? He should look at developing an app that assists with CV creation, maybe for a site operates a better trained AI model, maybe. Yeah, that's one way to do it. You can build an app that actually, does that CV creation for you. People can use it maybe for free or for a small cost. But dude, ChatGPT does that. Claude does that. I can literally now say, go make me a CV, make it look pretty, and it will do that. So that in itself might not even be a long-term solution. Unless you could say my app helps people get more jobs at this rate, there's a 35% chance probability of you getting a job when you use my CV service. Now that is an interesting angle, but that will be very hard to prove most likely and very hard to do. But that's maybe the business you want to be in, is that if you use my service, then there's a 35% chance or a 30% chance that you most likely are going to find a job. You're increasing your chances by 30% to get a job. Because now people are not comparing that to AI or anything else. They're just looking at, oh, geez, if I do it through that guy, regardless of what he does or how it looks, or there's a 30% chance that I'm actually more that I'm going to get hired. And we're in a country where a lot of people do want to get hired. But I still think that's a band-aid on a bullet wound. I'm not saying that there's not a short-term solution for you. I'm just saying long-term, you're going to continue swimming upstream. And the stream is just going to get stronger and stronger and more difficult to swim with. So the question is, how much energy do you have? Because if the task of swimming upstream and every year the stream is getting stronger and stronger is heavy and you have limited energy, then I would say rather cut your losses and find a stream that you can jump in and flow with, as opposed to a stream that you're swimming upstream against, a current that you're swimming against. Cool. All right. Much love to everyone. I want to say goodbye. Thank you for hanging with me. It's always a pleasure. It's always fun, at least for me. See you guys tomorrow. Bye.